Good morning, students. I hope that you guys are doing well. The purpose of this video is to continue with our new genre. It's found in Wonders in the page 122, and the title is Rescuing Our Reefs. Now, before we begin, it is important to know that this is a narrative nonfiction genre, meaning that it's narrated by a person telling us a story or their experience. However, the information that they're telling us is very much real. That's what we call nonfiction, okay? Before we start reading, we can observe the pictures and the topic and the title and see that the setting is very much real and has elements that we can find in an ecosystem that is underwater, okay? So, before we begin, we have an introduction. Now, the purpose of the introduction that we have worked before in class is to set the tone and let the readers know what will be the main topic that the author or the narrator will be focusing on. In this case, the ecosystem, and also the relationship of the animals that live there. How do I know that? Because in the introduction, the narrator gives us a little story about the first things she encounters while swimming in the Florida Keys. Now, I encourage you students to follow the reading with me and then to dissect or analyze each heading, because each heading talks about the ecosystem but provides additional information about different elements of this ecosystem. For example, the animals that live there, the plants that live there, the cause and effect of contamination and pollution, the relationship between the food chains of the animals, etc., etc. Even though it gives us a lot of scientific information, it is still talking about the same topic, okay? So we will begin with the introduction. Sorry if I stutter, okay? And we will complete the text and answer the last question found in page 125 inside of your notebooks, okay? So we will begin. It says, sitting on the side of the boat, the photographer fixes her scuba tank and mask. She waves at the man in a fishing boat. Then she dives backwards into the clear waters of the Florida Keys. She swims, breathing through her regulator. A large, colorful coral reef is laid out before her eyes. Sea anemones, red hindfish, gouty parrotfish, yellow angelfish, and other animals ignore her as they go about their business. Life in the reef has flourished and grown. Connections. The photographer knows the plants and animals in the reef ecosystem need each other to survive. Reefs are made up of billions of tiny animals called coral polyps. Plants like algae live inside the coral. The algae uses a process called photosynthesis to turn energy from the sun into food for themselves and the coral. In return, the coral gives the algae a home and the carbon dioxide needed for photosynthesis. Algae are a part of the food chain called producers. Producers make their own energy. The photographer sees a blue-yellow parrotfish nibbling at a coral. She takes a picture. The parrotfish breaks apart the coral to get the algae-filled polypus inside. In a food chain, the parrotfish is a consumer. Consumers cannot produce their own energy. As the parrotfish eats the algae, energy is passed through the food chain. In the distance, the photographer notices the long silver body of a barracuda lurking. The seagrass ripples in the current, swaying back and forth. It almost hides the hungry predator. She snaps a photo and swims on. Coral bleaching. The photographer shoots more photos and she swims. The reef must have looked like this hundreds of years ago. But then she stops and stares at a big area of bleached white coral. Once colorful, whitish coral now looks like the broken pieces of a crumbled castle. Coral depends on a natural balance to stay healthy. Climate change and pollution can cause an imbalance. Some areas have dried up from droughts, while others have had more rain. Too much sun and warmer ocean temperatures can cause coral bleaching. If pollution gets into the water, or the water gets too warm, the relationship between the coral and the algae breaks down. The algae stops making food, the coral ejects the algae that are what gives the coral color, then makes the coral lose its colors. It starves because it needs the algae to make food. Many plants and animals depend on the coral for food and shelter. As more and more coral reefs die, many animals and plants that live in this reef may become extinct. The beautiful reef the photographer had seen earlier will resemble the white crumbler reef before her. Balancing act. She turned and swam back to the boat. Later today, she would send her photographs to the Nature Conservancy. It is an organization that works to rescue our fragile reefs. Scientists there are trying to rebuild the reefs by attaching small pieces of staghorn coral to concrete blocks. Staghorn coral is used to grow new coral. Once the coral grows, the blocks are planted in the reefs. The photographer hopes her pictures will help spread the word. They show the relationship between pollution, climate change, and coral bleaching. She breaks through the water's surface and climbs into the boat. I got some good shots of the healthy reef and the sick reef, she shouts at her partner. Once aboard, she immediately begins putting her photos in her laptop. So that is the end of our narrating nonfiction text, and it says, in the last part, make connections. Talk about how the plants and the animals live inside the reef and how are they connected. What could you do to save the coral reefs? You will take both questions featured in page 125 and you will write them and answer them inside of the notebook, okay? In this case, we cannot do a group discussion. However, I would like to hear your ideas and inputs about the text so we can share them when we return to school. Happy learning!